Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Join us here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first. An engineer by trade, a sci-fi lover ever since he can remember, Crane Whitmore imagines Earth in the aftermath of nuclear war and takes us to galaxies beyond our wildest imaginations as we follow the chosen few humans who remain in his book Star Crew, Battle of Noctu. When'd you start writing?
I started writing probably in my mid-20s. I'm mid-40s now. What motivated me to start writing was a teacher actually in high school. I was a little bit troubled kid, and I'd written a paper and it was full of vulgarity and things like that. So she pulled me outside and she had a talk with me, and that talk just sort of stuck, and it always stuck with me. And so in my mid-20s, I just sat down at a computer and started writing a book, and that book's finished. It's not published. But probably 10 years went past, and Star Crew, I started probably 6 years ago. And because my job's pretty demanding, it was just kind of like right here and there, on the weekends when I had free time or in the evenings. And kind of most authors' story is similar to that. So just kind of trying to squeeze it in when I could.
Yeah, but some people are way busier than others. When I talk to ER nurses, who work like round the clock, and I talk to people like you, I'm like, man, you must really be inspired to spend your free time wrapping your head around a book. Was there anything in particular that inspired you to write this?
No, just sort of my love for science fiction, I guess. This book's not like Star Wars or Star Trek, but I always liked, the creatures and the different worlds and things like that. And, from childhood, I was always had a very good imagination at, creating big elaborate wars or stories or something in my bedroom. And I don't think that's ever left me. So it's enjoyable for me. I like doing it. And so it's, fun for me. And when I have time to do that, I like to read and write.
Is this all one book?
This is all one book. I'm actually writing the sequel to it now. So
how's the story go?
It's post-apocalyptic. Essentially, there's a nuclear war. There's some fallout, and there are survivors. They go to the bottom of canyons and things like that to try to survive. The long short of it is basically they get abducted and taken out into space to and thrust into a world of sort of the unknown and lots of different challenges and things like that.
So tell me about your characters.
The main character is an ex-Navy SEAL. He's more like on the serious side. He's more, mission driven, things like that. Somebody that he fell in love with at the bottom of the canyon. She was ex Vegas showgirl, but always aspired to be an MMA fighter. And her dad, when she was younger, was training her to do that. There's a former Olympic champion, and then an ex inmate, or former inmate, and a doctor. So very different walks of life, and they all come together after they're abducted in space and sort of form this really unique and weird bond, and kind of just gets into people of differences having to work together.
How did the nuclear war happen? Do you get into that at all?
I don't really get too much into that. It's more about the fallout of that, and I do mention the United States is the one who kind of drives it to happen, but I don't get into it much more beyond that. And I could in future books. I don't know if I'm gonna just write the sequel. I have other things in the works that I kind of want to do. So I might come back to it later, but
When you retire later.
right. Yeah. When I have a little bit more time to dedicate to it.
Are these the only people left on Earth that are still alive?
No, there's other survivors in different tribes or clans or whatever. Yeah, there's more people, but it's very scarce. Earth's desolate. It's almost not livable. And so yeah, they actually I don't want to give away any spoilers, but um, they wind up going back to Earth, and there's some things there.
So, how do the aliens decide who they're going to take with them?
That's described a little bit in the book too. There's just something within these individuals that the aliens are drawn to, mainly for selfish reasons. They're trying to enhance these human beings to serve them so that they can take advantage of things in their galaxies. So there's this whole conflict between alien species going on in different universes, galaxies. Not universes, but galaxies, sorry.
So, there's something in each one of these people that they want to exploit to better wherever they are.
Right, yeah.
Can you give me an example of some of the conflicts that they face?
So the main alien species were developed by the primary antagonist, and he left his planet because he wanted more power. He wanted to rule, as many species as he could. So there's these enhancement chairs that you can develop, or that you can that will enhance a species and make them more intelligent and make them more powerful. So the Selmax, which are the primary species on Noctu, which is the title of the book, Battle at Noctu, are enhanced, but they sort of rebel against this rogue general, and he's sort of elvish looking. His skin's like pitch black. He's got like these witch-like hands, and he's really sinister and sly and sneaky. So anyway, he enhances the species. They rebel against him, so he goes back to essentially he's the one who has the humans abducted. They're enhanced too in a different way, not through the chair. And so there's this huge conflict and war on Noctu.
So, is it literally a chair that you sit in?
Yeah, it's sort of like this chair. It's got straps, a little helmet, and it just comes down and goes over their whatever species head and kind of just does something to them.
And they come out bigger, stronger, smarter.
Yeah, primarily more like intelligent, I think, is the enhancement.
I think we could use that chair right now.
I think you're
Don't
right.
you? We
Yeah,
could use that chair.
absolutely, definitely.
Maybe we should take that chair somewhere where there needs to be decisions made.
Right. Yeah.
Anywhere, anywhere.
Yeah, somewhere that might rhyme with Schmoshington.
You're funny. Is there a lesson to be learned here?
Yeah, I think the moral is essentially just people who normally would not work together are forced to come together, and they don't even think about their differences because there's so much going on. You could kind of think back to big events here on Earth, like 9/11. I don't think we were all Americans. There was no division like there is now in our country. And it didn't matter what what walk of life you came from. It was just us against them, and that's sort of the framework for this book. It's them against whoever they deem as the enemy.
So there's no time. There's no room for judging. There's no room for slinging dirt. They have to work together. They have to get it all together.
I forgot the other character, which is actually my comic relief in the book. He's a motorcycle gang guy. His name's Jedrick. He's got the whole long hair and the whole vibe, but he's always throwing jabs at everybody when they're too serious. Like if I could compare him to somebody, he's sort of the Han Solo of this book. So he's the guy who's always just kind of trying to keep it light. So they meet up with these other humans on Kepler, which is a real planet. So I like to incorporate some realistic elements to my books too, even if they're fiction.
Should I know that, or do I need to go sit in the chair?
You could Google it. NASA found it. I don't recall when, 10 years ago or so. But yeah,
Okay.
you could throw it up on Wikipedia. It's an Earth-like planet. They don't know if there's any life or anything like that on it, but in
Right.
my book there is. So yeah, so they go to this planet, and there's these 6 others that are sort of like the mirror images, not exactly, but mirror images of these humans. But there's this one guy that's really big, and he throws jabs at him, calling him Humpty Dumpty and all this stuff. And, and there's a situation later on in the book where that particular character gets in some trouble, and he's kind of thrust into some action trying to help. And I'm not going to give away what happens to that character, but yeah. So
So he's the fun guy. He's the fun guy.
yeah, but he does get serious when he needs to be, and he's just there for comic relief mostly. But I think he's my favorite character, but I'll let other people judge who their favorite characters are.
Are any of these characters based on anybody you know?
Absolutely nobody I know. Nobody.
Absolutely
No,
not. Not even yourself?
no, there might be little bits and pieces of myself and some of these characters. I think that's the case with pretty much any character that any author writes. There's things that they are, relating to or have seen or witnessed or whatever. Um, but I would say probably I'd maybe the humor in Jedrick, maybe, but um, for the most part, no. I mean, I can't really relate to the Doctor. There's just, certain characters that I really don't have much in common with.
So what happens now? Well, how you feeling about talking about this? How you feeling about promoting it from where you are?
Well, that's sort of the trick of it. I'm not really sure which avenues to go. Obviously, I've put out some advertising and it's done okay, but in terms of like going to do book signings and things like that, nothing like that's been necessarily set up for me. So
I mean, it sounds to me like you need the Comic Con crowd.
yeah, potentially.
And there's a whole community online of people who write this kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I've connected to, Facebook groups and things like that. So it's nice to find like-minded people on the internet, and it'd be really nice to find some in person. So yeah, Comic Con is.
Well, are you sharing your book with these people on Facebook?
Um, not not particularly. And it's just like time for me, obviously, is sort of restricting me from doing as much as I'd like to. Um, so yeah, I think that I don't know how I break free of the engineering thing. I guess if the book makes $1 trillion at some point, then yeah, I could transition into doing that a little bit more.
Well, yeah, but you gotta get people have to know about it, and
Yeah,
finding
definitely.
these like-minded people. I'm just trying to think like how do you? This is well, not, I mean, this sounds like an interesting book because in part, um, everybody's talking about aliens. And is the
Right.
government hiding them from us? And we're
I know.
actually
I was.
spending money. I mean, maybe that's the one thing everybody can agree on that there might be aliens, right? So they have these hearings and people are testifying about how they've seen ships and blah blah. So I mean there's a certain level of interest there just among the, regular public, but there's also people who just live and breathe this stuff, the video gamers, the
Oh,
sci-fi
absolutely.
enthusiasts, and there has to be those people exist in your
Right.
town.
Yeah. No, they do because
How about a comic book store? Isn't there a comic book store near you?
yeah, it's just not tradition. It's not technically a comic book. Like the cover makes it look like that. I kind of now wish I would have had like some artwork inside of the book, but maybe in a second edition. Um, but yeah, I was getting my tire changed. You're totally right about that. I was getting my tire changed a couple weeks ago, and some kids started talking about this space video game and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a published author, and this is my book, and he seemed really interested in it. But you're right about the video game thing and comics. I think that's sort of the avenue that I should try to chase down.
Yeah, why not? I mean, wherever, nothing. It's funny because I talk to a lot of people who are like, well, I want to go to New York and I want to go here. It's like, you really, especially when you've got a job like you have, that's impossible. You don't have any choice but to start where you are,
Right.
to go to the
Yeah.
fairs. I don't know what they do in Tennessee, but, certain parts of America, like in middle America, there's a lot of fairs. There's a lot of state
Yeah,
fairs.
we have one.
You know?
We have one coming up, and the state fair is actually in my town. So,
Up, see.
uh, yeah, they do a lot here.
Well, since you don't have
There's
to write anymore on the weekends, you could set up your table maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. There's a lot of bookstores around here too. I've thought about going in and just kind of introducing myself and seeing if they'll buy a few and throw them up on the shelf and promote me as the local author.
Yeah, and then there's also like the libraries where you can do an author talk and talk to people about how, I always, your process. I always wanted to be an author. This is how I managed to fit it in and, organize my thoughts and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you're a local author and doing a talk on that,
Right.
and your book
Yeah, yeah.
is, and here's what I produced. What would be your advice for somebody who really wants to publish a book?
I would say just do it. Just I can't. As simple as that sounds, it's just the truth. You just have to sit down. You just have to do it. You have to look for inspiration everywhere, whether it's a movie, whether it's a book, whether it's walking down the street and you see a weird looking three-legged dog. You just have to sit down and just do it. It's really that simple, and there's no magic to it. There's no trick to it. Just putting in the action, obviously, in my case, was enough to get me published. So I think that anybody that wants to be a writer absolutely can. Um, Maybe I should rephrase that. I think that anything that you want to put your mind to, you can do. And I have a couple books written fully, not edited, and I have this one published. So it's just a matter of getting those out there and putting in the work, really.
Great. What a pleasure to meet you, Crane.
Absolutely. Likewise.
All right. I look forward to talking to you again.
Definitely. Thank you for your time.
Take
Bye.
it easy. Bye-bye. Did you ever wonder if your significant other had the opportunity to cheat? Would they take it? Janet L. Adams has just the background to explore the possibilities in her book entitled The Puzzle. Hey, Janet, how hot is it in Texas?
Oh my gosh, we have had like 4 weeks of 100+ weather.
Is that unusual?
It is. For us, we might have a couple days of having 100 degrees, but not weeks.
Weeks. Oh my God. What do you do? Just go from air conditioned car to air conditioned house to air conditioned job?
Well, actually, I'm retired, so I have been hibernating. I get out at 5 o'clock in the morning and get my walking done, and I'm home by 6:15, and
Wow. What did you used to do?
I was a school counselor.
Oh, that must have been interesting.
I loved it. I loved every minute of my job. Our clientele was wonderful. The parents were very supportive. It was the best job. I mean, I just felt like God laid that in my hands. And my principal and I worked well together. We were just such a good team. She let me have free reign of developing a character program. And I mean, it was just awesome.
So when did you start writing? What made you decide to write?
Well, I decided to write for a lot of different reasons. I mean, I kind of got sparked when I was like in 7th, 8th grade. I had an amazing teacher. Her name was Mrs. Dishinger. She sparked it a little bit in me, but then it lay dormant for a long time. And I actually was in my 14th year of marriage, and this idea popped into my head. And I thought, man, this would make such a great book.
Just out of nowhere?
Yeah.
Like, were you concerned that maybe your husband was cheating or?
Not at all, because I just know who he is. But I mean, there was a lot. He works at a hospital, and there's a lot of Peyton Place stuff going on. And I knew that life existed. And temptation, I mean, he'd come home and he'd say, oh, so and so made a pass at me today, or, this happened, or, this is going on with here. And I thought, okay, but yeah, he's had several passes made at him over the years. And, but I've never been concerned about him. I mean, I did some supplemental work besides working at the school. I did some accounting work. And the people that I worked for, they were both divorced. And they said, oh, you're ignorant if you don't think your husband's cheating. And I thought, okay, just because that happened in your life does not mean it's happening in everybody's life. What are you doing to keep your relationship thriving? I mean, in my mind, I was thinking that. So why didn't your relationship work? Are you not, keeping your fire kindled? I mean, you have to do things to keep a relationship going. And to me, one of the best things that you can do is to elevate your man. You have to make him feel like he's the most important person in your life, which he's supposed to be. And so I thought, so you probably fell short too, if you're not keeping your relationship sparked. And I'm not saying in a sexual way even. I'm saying just your spouse needs to know that they're important in your life and number one besides God. So
Good point.
I just
Because everybody automatically thinks it's sex.
Yeah.
It's got to be about sex, but it's about, are you coming home and talking to each other? Are you putting your job first? Are you more interested in what's going on at work than you are in what's going on at home? And
I mean, even from when we first had our first child, and she was 2, and she'd hear that his vehicle pull in the driveway, and the joy on her face. Oh, daddy's home, daddy home, daddy home. And just that. And then when he'd come home and she would run to him like, I'm so glad you're here. I mean, it just made him feel so important. But the spouse needs to do that as well. I mean, not just wife to husband, but husband to wife. In the book, the wife, she starts out just thinking, oh, everything's just so mundane. My routine is just, all I do is wash dishes and clean the house and do laundry. And, I'm just so not getting fulfilled with this. And so she devises this plan to spice up her life. And one thing she does in that plan is she concentrates on her husband. But then it backfires because she ends up writing just these short little enticement letters to her husband anonymously.
to see what he would do?
Well, yes.
Does he tell her that he's getting these letters?
Originally, I mean, when it first starts, he does, but then he stops.
Oh.
And so she wonders, is he seeking out who this person is? Is he curious? Is he developing feelings? Is he inquisitive on who this is? And so now he's doing some problem solving and, And has he developed a relationship then with someone else? But yet she's the one that started it all. So she's like, I'm stuck here. I have to follow this through. So she follows it through.
Okay. So is she prepared? I mean, is she prepared for the possibility that he might be interested in having an affair?
There's some conflicts going on.
I bet.
There's a lot of conflicts going on. But originally, so she has some pictures taken of herself, and she has it transposed onto a puzzle. And so as she writes each one of these little secret admirer letters, she includes a couple pieces of the puzzle, which is a picture of her. So then he receives those. But originally, she sits down and she comes up with a whole plan. She wants to concentrate on all of his good character traits. And so she lays it all out on what she's going to cover. But in that process, she really realizes what an amazing man she has. So her concentration, her focus has changed. And now, rather than looking at all the negatives, the mundane routines and stuff, she's concentrating on the positives, which is one thing I really wanted to get through in the book, is that you need to cherish your relationships. You need to look for those positives, and you need to change your focus if you're not doing that.
Do you think sometimes people don't even realize that you get so wrapped up in life and your kids and your job, you don't even realize you're losing focus?
Exactly. And as a school counselor, that's what I constantly had to do, was to get out those irrational thoughts and to plug in the rational thoughts. And we have to do that in all relationships and in all phases of our life. If you're always concentrating on the negatives, you're going to be miserable. I mean, and you can take the smallest little thing that's happening and make it so major that you can't function. I mean, just think about your body. If you had a splinter, look how tiny that splinter is. But if you just keep concentrating on that, then you can't function until, you mend that, even though it's so small. Well, the same thing happens in relationships. If you're just constantly thinking of the smallest thing, but making it so major, your relationship's going to be miserable. Constant flip it, change it.
What's the biggest obstacle? Is it insecurity? Is it lack of self-esteem? I mean, what prevents it? What brings you to the point where it's just easier to wallow in the mud, roll around in it? You know what I mean? Smother yourself in there and just be down. Is it just easier to do that sometimes than it is to say, I'm not going to let myself go there?
It's not like really one thing. It's your mindset. You just have to have that mindset that I'm not going to be negative. Our whole environment right now is that way. We're making everybody a victim in our country. Everybody is a victim. And you have to change that and not be a victim, but be a victor. You have to decide, I'm not going to be a victim, but it's my control. Every thought is your control. Every choice is your control. And when you realize that you do have control over that, then, I mean, even so far as health issues, we do have control over a lot of our health issues. I mean, what are we putting in our bodies? We're just putting in so many poisons in our system. But it's a choice. Yeah, we all make bad choices and we all do things that we shouldn't do. But it's ultimately your choice. So you have to have control of your choice and realize that. Your choice in your relationship, your choice in your life, your choice in your job.
You must have been a great counselor.
Oh, you're so sweet. Like I said, I loved my job. I loved every minute of that.
So in this book, do you wind it up or is it a cliffhanger?
I mean, I could have put it's a short, easy read.
Okay.
There's so much more I could have put into it. I think it would make a great Hallmark movie because most Hallmark movies are singles meeting, falling in love. But this is not. This is definitely a married couple, which I think is not valued in today's society.
What, married couples
Yes, married couples.
are not valued?
Right.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, I'm just thinking of different situations, but so many people that I mean, I'm very blessed that our children met and fell in love, got married, and started their life together. Too many people meet, decide they're going to live together, and then maybe down the road might get married or it fizzles out. So where was their focus? And I truly believe that we need to put God's plan first. And God cherishes marriage. And that's what I wanted. I wanted us to get back to those values that we're supposed to have.
I am dumbfounded. I don't know. I don't know what values we have anymore. Like, I don't know what's going on. You know,
I know. I know. I mean,
I can't believe where we are right now. I can't.
Exactly. You know, if the family is destroyed, that's your core for all relationships is a family. So if you destroy the family, and the family starts with a marriage. So you have to value marriage and what marriage is supposed to be. Marriage was not meant to be temporal. It was meant to be a lifelong. And I know there are situations that happen. Don't get me wrong. I do know that there are some very unfaithful people in this world, and those are justified.
Yeah, but do you forgive them? Do you try to work that out? Do you try to understand why they were unfaithful?
I can only tell you my opinion on this, but I do believe that you should forgive. I mean, Christ forgave us, so I believe in forgiveness, but you don't forget. I mean, I'm not going to forget and then go into another situation where it happens again. I'm going to remember that. And I think everybody should remember that. But you can forgive that person.
But can you continue with that person? Can you keep, for the sake of your family, keep it together and try to find your way through it?
And I think that that's something that every individual has to decide. I mean, I can't make that judgment for somebody else. Again, it's that choice. What choices are you going to make?
What are you going to do next? Everybody, I'm sure, knows that you were a counselor and you've now written a book.
See, I really don't know what to do to promote my book. I mean,
well, I mean, I don't know where you are at in your community, because this is the question that I get all the time. I've never written a book, but I can tell you that people that have been successful, or at the very least made back their investment, start where they are. I mean, I've had people say to me, I don't know what to do. I'm not really good in front of people. You know, it's like, okay, well, how about social media? You want to go that route? But you sound like you would be very comfortable in front of, obviously you're a very religious person. I know my mom in her church, they have a book club and they read all kinds of books. This is a great book for a book club. It's great discussion. I mean, this would inspire a lot of discussion, don't you think?
I really would hope it would. One of the doctors in town, my entire family works at the hospital, so we're all kind of connected there. But one of the doctors told my daughter that he loved the book. And he is in a married relationship and has been for years. And he said, I loved it so much, I went out and bought more to give as gifts. So
That's great.
he said, would your mom sign those for me? So I thought, well, that kind of made me feel better, that it was not just a woman that was appreciating the story. Well, because it is a romance, and
But a well-written book is a well-written book, and if he enjoyed it and he thinks other people will enjoy it, that should tell you that you must have something there, and it's just a matter of going out and talking about it when it's not 100 degrees. Go out early in the morning, or I don't know if you have groups, couples groups. I don't know how that works. I don't know, but you're probably plugged in somewhere and you don't even realize it. You could do an author talk at a local library. I was just talking about that earlier.
I actually have a couple author talks scheduled for my first book that I wrote. It was actually a children's book.
Right. So you're already plugged into the schools. Where are you plugged in as far as what do you do? Are there any adult groups that you're involved with?
I really haven't been, because the last 2 years I've kept my grandson, but he started pre-K this year. So
Yeah.
I feel like I can open up into so many different areas now.
Yeah. I mean, I can see you reading passages out of your book. And wherever you're set, I mean, you can't compare the author talks you're doing for elementary schools to this book. This is definitely an adult book. But it seems to me there's a lot of book clubs out there.
Okay.
There's state fairs. People go to state fairs, and we don't have a lot of state fairs here in New Jersey. But it seems like in middle America, there's a lot of state fairs, and people are like, yeah, I went to the state fair and I set up a booth. And
I did sign into a book club. I just feel like I just now can do that since I'm not keeping my grandbaby. But it's a local book club. It's down at we have a bookstore downtown that's kind of very vibe-ish, So they usually have those meetings down there.
so you could do an author talk at that bookstore.
Yeah.
And people know you, right?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I probably had out of our there's no telling. Our student population was 600 every year. So all those parents, and I did that for over 30 years. So
There you go. Is there a local paper that people read, either online or
yes,
actually read? You're definitely, you're a local author now. You're definitely worth a story.
I think I'm going to submit something to the paper and see.
An excerpt or something. Yeah. This is good. I mean, because who doesn't have a relationship problem? Who isn't struggling?
Yeah.
Who isn't wondering, not, even the best marriages have their moments.
And truthfully, my marriage has been so easy. I've been married for 42 years, and my relationship is very easy. We've had 2 disagreements in our 42 years, and
Oh boy,
were about the same thing, and they were like early on in our marriage.
You are so lucky.
He's easy. He's a hard worker. He's a good provider. He thinks of others. So I mean, my marriage has been so easy. We set goals together. We worked on those goals.
That's great. Good for you.
And like I said, I think too often we just focus on the negative. And if you just shift to focusing on the positive, which is what she does by writing the Secret Admirer letters, then it changes her focus, which changes attitude.
Well, Janet, it sure was nice talking to you.
Well, it's been nice talking to you. Talking to an adult is always wonderful.
Talking to an adult, I wouldn't go that far, but thank you. Listen, you have a great day.
Likewise. And
All right. Thanks for taking the time.
Summer's good. Thanks.
All right. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We hope you enjoyed this edition of the Reader House Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.